D, is Neytiri a racist in Avatar Fire and Ash?
No, of course not. It's perfectly reasonable to be angry at the group of people who are oppressing your people daily, who killed your children, who are taking your land on a daily basis.
I was stunned by how they've talked about it since then, and this whole concept of Neytiri being a racist and how outrageous it is that she hates her oppressor after they've murdered her child and are actively trying to murder the rest of her family and community. I feel like, what's going on here?
But what's really important about that is that both James Cameron and Zoe Saldaña have been they're on the record saying that Neytiri is a racist. I find it particularly wild for James Cameron to say that. Zoe Saldaña she can't really do anything to shock me these days. This is a woman who's been very explicit about the fact that she doesn't identify as Black. This is a woman, even though to me, well, it's up to you, race is ultimately about phenotype, right? In my context, she looks like a Black woman. And even though she's been explicit about not identifying as Black, she's been more than happy to put herself in roles that very clearly involve someone who is Black. So I don't really trust her when it comes to these sorts of topics anyway. And by the way, she's getting a lot of pushback for those comments. What I find more surprising is that James Cameron isn't getting the same pushback, because I'm like, you're a white man. And how dare you, basically? How dare you say that? How dare you? Because he's basically saying that a woman who is coded as Indigenous, right? And of course, in the real world, we have all the nasty context around the world of various Indigenous peoples who have lost their land, right? And this film seems to be simultaneously saying to them that you guys didn't fight enough. And in fact, he's even been on record saying that maybe this is what the world would look like if Indigenous people only fought harder. So you can't simultaneously say that, but then condemn Neytiri for being angry about the fact that these people are taking over her land. And something else I find interesting about this film is that they use the term pink skins very explicitly, right? And it's a reminder that James Cameron has made the deliberate choice to make the humans only pale skins, people who are presenting as white. And that's a deliberate choice. So for me, as somebody who's a Black person who comes from a background of people who were not only colonized but also enslaved by white people, I don't take it very lightly when, I don't care if it's James Cameron, Zoe Saldaña, some random on the internet, implies that somebody who's been colonized, somebody who's basically going to be enslaved, is wrong for hating their oppressor. Were my ancestors wrong for hating our oppressors?
On the subject of the pink skins and all the human invaders all being white, another layer of white that's interesting is that that's such a simplistic way of viewing how the US Army and Navy tends to be.
Right.
Black people and people of color are overrepresented in the armed forces in the US partly because of economic reasons.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, like, in real life, if you had a Pandora-like situation going on, guess what? A lot of the US Army that's going to be there, they're going to be Black and brown and Asian people. If you look at the composition of ICE, you see stunning things. If you look at the people that get deployed to Iraq and Venezuela and places, it's not all lily white. So I suppose that the flattening of that racial dynamic is done on purpose for Cameron to make his points. But it actually kind of takes me out of it, because I'm like, yeah, it demonstrates again your understanding of race, class, and colonialism is unsophisticated.
Yeah.
It's more complicated than that, especially when you're dealing with a hegemon that has absorbed people of color into their ranks.
Yes.
I just find it funny every time they show the humans and they're all white in the US Army. I'm like, no, that's not how that works.
And the thing is, like, so I agree with you, but I think there's another layer to it as well, in that I understand why James Cameron has done it, but I really struggle with the fact that, like, the humans in this film are presented as white people, right? And the aliens are presented as everything except white. So, and that's another thing I don't like about this film. The Na'vi are basically a big conglomeration of various Indigenous groups around the world. And I don't know, I know that the film is not trying to say that Indigenous peoples are non-human or alien, but actually, I'm not even that confident when it comes to James Cameron. There's something about portraying Indigenous people and separating them from humanity that bugs me when it comes to this series, even though I know it's not the intention.
I think I understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
There's I can't really put it into words, but I understand what you're trying to say.
It's because of the historical precedent of that exact behavior, of trying to separate indigenous people from their humanity in order to take over their land. In this case, it's separating indigenous people from their humanity to make $1 billion. And this is an open question. I actually don't know if he does do anything with that money, but there's a part of me that's like, okay, so we're separating indigenous people from their humanity. We're not telling the stories properly. We're not communicating the real harms and dangers of colonialism properly. Because again, this film is about accepting the colonizer's son in a positive way. So it's like, okay, you're making all of this money from this. How are you really benefiting indigenous people? Because you're not hiring them, right? Most of the actors are not indigenous here. There's a lot of race swapping going on.
He goes to the bottom of the Mariana Trench and he gives commentary when the Titan submersible implodes underwater.
Yeah. So it's just like, I don't know. I really struggle when it comes to this series. I really, really struggle with it. I struggle to say anything positive, to be honest.
On the subject of what are you doing with all the money, James Cameron is a famous conservationist. Like he does do like a lot of rich people. He has causes that he triumphs and he has foundations and stuff like that towards saving the Amazon and the rainforest and things like that. And I'm sure some of the money goes towards that, at least performatively. I don't really know what he ultimately does with the majority of his own personal wealth. But I won't say that he doesn't talk about these things in real life, even outside of the Avatar film cycles. He does. He does talk quite a bit about environmental conservation and all of that kind of stuff.
He
But
does,
once
but he
again, I know
brings
what
the
you mean.
same, but he brings the same narrow-minded approach that he does with this film.
I understand your perspective.